A few months ago, we were preparing for my father to come to Brazil to continue his treatment. And I spoke with a friend, and she asked, is it really better for him to come to Brazil? Isn't it better for him to stay in Atlanta where he's getting care already? I said, maybe. I'm not sure that my dad and my mom have a great support system as much as they would have in Brazil. So you can imagine how glad I am to be so wonderfully wrong. I think to Emory and to the academic world that my father was in, he was known as the Reverend Dr. Luiz Wesley de Souza. For a lucky few, he was Wesley. My mother knew him as Amor. For myself, my brothers, and my sister, we knew him as Pai. But I want to tell you a little bit about someone that my father was, that probably none of you have heard this nickname before, and if you have, it's been way too long. His nickname when he was a kid was Luizinho. So for the first 6 years of Luizinho's life, he lived in a parsonage of a Methodist church nested in the rolling hills in farmlands of a neighborhood called Jericho. It was actually a rural neighborhood of a very small town. His father was the pastor, and his first experience with preaching was watching him at the pulpit. Just as an aside, I want to tell you a little bit about what kind of pastor my grandfather was. So this is a rural farmland, and farmers had planted their harvest, and it had been months since the last rain, and they were desperate. And in their desperation, they came to my grandfather, and they complained, and they prayed with him, and they started doubting God. And on Sunday morning, at that time they had Sunday morning service and Sunday evening service. The same people came in the morning, same people came in. And in the morning service, my grandfather told everyone for the evening service to come to church with umbrellas and tire chains because it was going to be very muddy. This was this early 1960s, but people thought he was crazy. Some tried to believe, some believed because it was their last hope. And in the evening service, some people came with umbrellas, not all. And in the evening time, it was still, when the sermon started, it was still quite bright, the sun shining very hard. And my grandfather preached, and afterwards, my grandmother sat down at the organ, as she did every Sunday, and she played a song that I don't know the translation, but the best I can do is "A Rain of Blessing We Will Have." And at that moment, they heard thunder, and by the end of the service, it was raining. This is a story that's told still today when we visit Jericho by the grandchildren of people who were there, and a story that we love to share with each other as well. A little bit about my grandfather, and I think something that really shaped the way my father thought about the world. My grandfather was the same man who hid seminary students who were being persecuted by the military dictatorship of the time. And when this time of dictatorship happened, there were moments that were harsher than others. And he had printed a banner and put in front of the church with the verse, "Seek the truth, and the truth shall set you free." And he preached that as well that Sunday. And he was detained by the military police and questioned. But we know that many people with simpler things were tortured or killed back then. Luizinho's calling into ministry was less of a divine event, a visibly divine event, and more of a prank, actually. When he was in middle school or high school, I'm not sure, some of his friends signed him up to a speech contest without telling him. And the day before the contest, he found out about this, and he came home and he asked his mother for help. So my grandmother opened some book with some story or something that was like a speech, and locked my father in a room with a mirror. And she said, "Just read this and repeat." And he asked, "How many times do I repeat this?" And my grandmother said, "Repeat until you've convinced yourself that you really believe what you're saying." And I think he won something. I don't know if it was first place or second or third or whatever, but that was a transformative experience for him, because he saw himself in that experience. He saw his own father in him. And then that's when he decided to seek a life of ministry. So this is the final story I want to share with you. So years ago, thin glass of faith broke underneath me, and I fell into a deep sinkhole of faithlessness. And I remember, I didn't tell anybody of my family, God forbid. I remember that I kept, though, trying to claw my way back up, trying to historically justify the unjustifiable, trying to focus on some Bible passages and act like others that I didn't like didn't exist, trying to live with new interpretations that stretched the remainder of my little faith to its limits. Appropriately, this was Easter Sunday 2006. I had traveled to Buffalo, New York, and my father called me. I don't know what I was doing, but I missed his call, and he left a message wishing me a happy Easter and explaining to me this was the most important Christian holiday. And then he shared a verse that sealed forever open the doors of my heart and my faith in Jesus Christ and the assurance of salvation through the grace of God the Father. That verse was 1 Corinthians 15:14. I'll read it to you. "And if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain. Your faith is in vain." So I then understood that what sustains my faith is not my vision or someone else's vision of the Bible, be it welcoming or repugnant. It's not my interpretation, not my culture, it's not my history, and it's not my experience. The only thing that truly sustains my faith is my belief that Christ has risen. And that's all I needed to trust on. So Luizinho, meu pai, me ensinou isso.
Luizinho, my father, taught me that.
Thank you.